Don't be shy. Yep. Would you like to share it with us?
You just mentioned about the church in the public square, and just I suppose I kind of wanted to ask a question: how does the church go out to public square? You know, the gospel messages go and read the gospel, and I think it's feel the church often asks people to come. What do you have to say about the church going into the public square?
Okay, that was a question about the church going into the public square. Did you look at David in particular for that? We'll start with you, and then you guys can be thinking.
I mean, a lot of things. First of all, there's dealing with your local MP. So my local MP is a guy called Ian Murray. He was famous last year for being the only Labour MP in Scotland. I've developed a relationship with Ian Murray because he knows that I'm not just interested in these right-wing issues. I'm interested in him as a person, and I'm sitting down and I'm talking to him about my worries about conversion therapy, my worries. So we're having a really good conversation. So because I have, MPs constantly say to me, Christians always come to us with the same issues. I'm trying to say to my MP, I'm interested in you. I'm interested in the whole political system. So as creating a relationship with our MP, I think we've to speak into something like the Christian Institute is great because it gives you facts. It's got a real good research basis. So speak into the public square, but I'm not expecting much from the public square. Maybe I'm not expecting the government to be at the vanguard of moral reform. So maybe I'm the wrong person to speak. Yeah, I'll speak into the public square, but I don't expect it to be the vanguard of revival in Scotland.
Sean, any comment?
Yeah. There's a way, I think, where we can speak about stuff and still be tasteful and not become arrogant, not become rude. So, for example, I've spoken about mental illness and things like that, some of the issues on the radio, but deal with it in a way that you speak from the Bible, quite empathetic with some of the stuff that people are struggling with, but deal with it in a way that you are trying to tell them this is where they can find real hope. Talk about the sanctity of life. We've done an interview about that. I've had some folks who, like many businessmen, come into the studio, interview them, but ask them questions about their faith, about their life, people who believe in the Bible, and show the folks in the public square that there is a way that they can live, there is a way that they can think about these issues that is different maybe to what the rest of the world is doing, but I've tried to be, because I'm not allowed to cause trouble, you see, so I have to be careful about how we do it. And so that's one of the ways that we've been doing it. Other than that, it's very difficult to, I would agree with you, I don't expect much, but it's just hard to find those opportunities to, so I do try to be quite visible in the town, going to the different shops, speak to different people. Anne's probably better than what I am, quite frankly, my wife. So just to create some sort of presence in the town. Our little church meets in the local community center, and every social welfare department is in there. St. Vincent de Paul's in there. So we try to do something where at least they know we're there, they know what we believe, they know that there's an avenue for help and hope and for the gospel. Try to keep the doors open, try to at least be a voice, a sounding board in the community, and just remind people that we're there. Other than that, it's been quite difficult, I think, in that area.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Sam, do you want to add anything?
Don't really have a lot to add to that. I suppose I would say there are those who have a gifting in the bigger sense, perhaps, and there are those who have the gifting to speak in the public square but maybe aren't always doing it. There are those who are doing it and probably shouldn't be doing it. But I think it comes back to changing hearts, and just that one-on-one to me is the key. The days are increasing, it seems, when public debate is being shut down. And so the opportunities perhaps need to be seized while the door is open. That door seems to be closing quite quickly in certain contexts. So I think for all of us as followers of Jesus, it's those public opportunities that we get one-on-one with folks, in the public spaces and places, wherever we engage with and wherever we're called to go, which is where we live our day and daily lives, and just to have that mindset that I'm going public with my faith in Jesus, to share it through my words, to share it through the way that I live and that I love. But yeah, ditto.
Okay. Thank you. Hope that was helpful. In the meantime, anybody got another one? Yes, this lady over here.
Just thinking about balancing community inside your church and you're reaching them, looking after them, as well as the community outside your church, especially when you've got different resources, few people, what's your priorities, and how do you decide?
Okay, so it's a question really about how we balance out, with limited resources, care for the community within the church and for it out with the church. Anybody got a response or a thought on that, how you do that? You've got the microphone there, Sean.
Yeah, I think that's, so I mentioned that we have a 3-step sort of what we're trying to do, and the third one would be that the church is central to a thriving community. So it's not just that we are a community as a church, but we also, if we're going to be a good church, a gospel-based church, we're going to impact the community. It's sort of what God expects us to do. There's no way. So as a church, we spend a lot of time eating together. We spend a lot of time fellowshipping. We have smaller groups who meet and chat. We have a worship group who meets to chat. We've got ladies who meet. We've got men. We're not trying to obviously break the church up into little groups, but we're trying to encourage. Paul says in the book of Romans, I know that there's goodness in you, that you're able to exhort and encourage one another. So I want to move away from the idea that the church is a place where only Pastor Sean can help you with your problems, where you have to go outside of the church for any kind of help with your problems. So we are trying to build a church where people are used to exhorting one another, where people are used to encouraging one another, where it's not unheard of for people to come up and say, listen, I see you're really struggling with that issue. Do you think you need to, talk to someone about it? And I think that's been lost in churches. Churches have become a place where people go to hear the Bible, to hear good teaching, but that element of exhorting and encouraging one another is something that I think is lacking. So we're trying to do that. We're helping people become disciples of one another, encouragers of one another. That's, I think, is vital to that idea of a church community. And then outside of the church, we're trying to make some inroads into, we've got some quite hard estates around us. So we're trying to do that. We just had a kids club, and we've had a mixture of people. So we've had people who are really well taught in our church, and we've got folks who are bringing their kids, and their kids are really, bad, ill-disciplined. In fact, when they walk in the door, some parents go, help, but we're trying to because there has to be a spilling over of the righteousness and the sense of who we are as a church. And so I'm making it sound like we're doing this for years, but we're not. It's something that we're trying to do. We don't get it right all the time, but it is something that we're trying to do to take what we believe and take it into the community. So
Okay.
I don't think there's a balance, though. You're just tired all the time, honestly.
Okay. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, the verse that immediately came to my mind was Galatians 6:10, be good unto all people, especially those of the household of faith. So there is actually a priority in the church to look after our own people. Acts chapter 4, there was no needy among them. They had all things in common. So it was a very powerful, and in New Testament church, there was a very powerful evangelistic effect of the fact that the children were safe, the women were safe, there was equality within the church. And we found it in our church, again, this is somewhat counterintuitive, that the least evangelistic programs were the social programs. Food bank, Mullen Toddlers, these were the least effective evangelistic things. And as you went up the tree, you found Christianity Explored was more effective. People bringing folk to the church was more effective. So again, that's kind of going against the prevailing idea. I've answered 2 questions here, but basically the church has absolutely got to care for itself. It's got what is the church? It's a suburb of heaven. It's a taste of the new creation. That when people walk into the company of the church, they're tasting the kingdom values, and that has to be attractive.
Okay, Sam, anything to add? You're happy with that? Maybe you say we're finishing at 5 past? Okay, we'll take one more question. David?
This maybe was one David Barron might start with, but I'm sure there are others who contribute. I was in Stornoway a few years ago, and COVID restrictions were just being relaxed, and life started to return to normal. And one of the things that folk were saying to me as I was talking to them about what was happening in society was they're coming for our children. And that was, I think, a response to some of the proposals that were being made by the Department of Education in Scotland. And I don't know how far that's been pushed since then, but I wonder, do we need to be more intentional in the church in terms of equipping parents to counter what in the book of Daniel, which Sam referred to, they were exposed to the language and literature of the Babylonians. And that's where our children are increasingly spending a lot of time. When I was in school, both in primary school and in secondary school, the 2 principals of each school were Christian. There was a Christian ethos in the schools. And there is, to some extent, still that here in Northern Ireland, but I think it's changed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have 4 grandchildren, so my 3-year-old started in nursery. At 3 years of age, she was given a leaflet about transgenderism and the fact that if you feel like a boy, you can be a boy. 3. I mean, it's absolutely appalling. Now, my son-in-law, who's very gracious, had a conversation with the principal. I think parents have got to do that, have conversations. Here's another thing. I, up until now, have not been a great fan of Christian schools. I really haven't been a great fan. I've been a great integrationist. I've always salt of the earth, get into society. I am now at a point, a tipping point, where I am more pro-Christian school. And I never thought I would come to that point. So I'm seeing that in Scotland, the education of values are so bad so if you're in a school state system, you have to graciously challenge, know what you're talking about, and say, if a child can be taken out because of, a child can be exempt from religious education if they're non-religious, that's absolutely fair enough. The same, should be given to folk who don't agree with that. I would like the Christian schools in Scotland to be more mainstream. I feel they're a little bit extreme, and I'll be unhappy putting my kids to them because I find their values a little bit too extreme for me. Like they wouldn't allow women to pray and stuff like that. It's a little bit too extreme. But we are certainly in that situation where I am alarmed about the way the children are going. That to me is folk talk about gaslighting. It's state-sponsored gaslighting. It's a quote that just came to me. It's quite good. That state-sponsored gaslighting.
You heard it here first. That's a Scottish perspective. South and North Ireland. Any thoughts on that?
David very kindly lent me, I think, his copy of Live Not by Lies a few years ago, and then a few of us met together to read that, and Rod Dreher's book, and just about how, those who following Nazism and the incoming communism were prepared and preparing their families for what was coming, because they knew that a lot of the parents could inevitably end up in jail, in prison, and so preparing. And it was really, there were a couple of families, and it really was a couple of families who were very key in keeping Christianity alive within that context. And I suppose the challenge is, whether you like Douglas Murray or not, or whether you agree with what he says or not, but Douglas Murray reckons that it's in the not too distant future we are going to get a barrage of things that are just going to come against us, and especially probably against the church. And I think the challenge to me is that I need to wake up to how do I equip within my own family context, but also within our community as a family of faith context. How do we equip our parents to equip their children to stand firm on what we believe in the gospel, and to be willing, to lay down their lives for it? Was it, his name's going to escape me, but the gentleman in Romania who was imprisoned for many years, Richard Wurmbrand, that's the one, and he would say that part of their Sunday school outing for the children was they would take them to the local zoo and to the lion's den, and would say, your great forefathers, they were fed to these for their faith in Jesus. And today we would go on a Sunday school outing to take our children to that would be, you'd be frowned upon. But yet the reality is, what's coming down the line is going to be absolutely horrendous, and we need to equip young disciples, old disciples too, to be courageous, to be committed. This continually, I love with Daniel, to continually serve the living God, and to instill that is a challenge, I confess. I get it so bad so many times, and I want to listen to these guys and what they're doing and learn from that. But we really need to help one another to equip this generation.
Yeah, I just became a granddad 3 days ago. Yeah, thank you. And she's a wee little girl called Rosalie. And Anne and I, the last couple of days, we've been praying that the Lord would save her soul. And I said to my daughter, the best thing I can do for you now is to be a good granddad and to help you teach my daughter about Jesus. And praise God, both of them know the Lord. They both go to a really good church. So there's hope for her, but there are a lot of kids who have no hope of finding a local church. So I think that's important for us to remember the gospel and to remember to reach out into those communities. I do think it's important to teach our parents. I was a first-generation Christian in my family. I was the only one who was a believer for a long time. And praise God, most of my siblings know the Lord, my nieces, my nephews. And we were talking today about, I was speaking to the gentleman, Peter, wasn't it? And we were talking about how it's easy for generations to lose a sense of, faith when we think of what happened with Israel, and when we think about how quickly it is for 1 or 2 or 3 generations to lose a sense of Christianity. It's also true that we can change the pattern of our lives, and we can influence our families and our grandchildren. So we've been talking a lot about that. My family before I became a believer, it was just crazy. It was alcoholism, abuse, it was all of the stuff that was in the world. And when I became a believer, not only was it my salvation, all of a sudden God made me aware of the fact that if I changed the patterns in my life, if I started living for the Lord as a Christian, I could impact my kids' lives and my grandchildren's lives, hypothetically. And so I agree with you. I don't have a lot of hope for the marketplace and all those things, but I do know that if you and I live for the Lord as parents, teach our children, love them, care for them, nurture them, and be a good influence in our grandparents, that's at least a good place where I know how to start. I don't really know if there's any correct answers in this world, because I do think the world's devolving. I don't think we're getting better. I think the world's becoming more evil. We're getting to the place in Romans where we're tolerating sin, where the world is applauding other ways of life that is just so far away from what God intended. And I think there will come a time when the Lord will say, you want to live like that? go ahead and live like that. So I think let it start with us, the way we love our wives, the way we teach our children, the way we love them, and pray for them.
Okay, thank you. I think we've run out of time now, but could you express your thanks to our team?